Welcome back guys, another NVM vlog, and in this vlog we'll be stage 2 tuning this Audi RS3. So guys, 2018 Audi RS3 7-speed DSG saloon. You've probably seen this car on the channel before. It did have a JB4 module fitted to it, and obviously intake, forged intercooler, NVF03 forged wheels and a full turbo back exhaust from Scorpion. The actual car itself runs about 500 horsepower and 650 newton meters of torque, so it was a well-equipped vehicle, even with the JB4. The JB4 is very warranty safe, so it's plug and play. But what we're going to do today, we're going to show you the background to the development work that we did on the Med 17 when the RS3 first came out. We're going to optimize the shift points, change the shift targets, set a neutral limit so we can rev it out a bit more in neutral, and also performance tune the ECU. So that's the main course of the vlog today, and also we're going to add a few things like pops and bangs and overruns. So guys, we just backed up the engine ECU and the gearbox ECU, so we'll go through the software a bit later to see how Audi do boost control and torque control within the ECU on the engine and also the gearbox itself. We're going to run the car back on the dyno with the JB4 in the same settings as last time. We did run it in winter. Let's see what it produces today, and also we'll put it back to standard, which is map 0 within the JB4, and then see what it produces a completely stock with all the bolt-ons on there. Once we've done that, we'll start setting up a calibration both for the gearbox and the engine ECU and build it up the best we can. So for the guys who haven't seen our previous videos, the car's in front wheel drive and the front wheels are only spinning. It is a quattro vehicle, Haldex controlled, so it only sends power to the rear wheels when the front wheels split. So for the internet police out there, the car's in front wheel drive dyno mode. This is how the factory measure it, this is how the roller brakes are done, and these are how development is done on this vehicle, so we don't overheat the rear Haldex. So guys, just ran it on the dyno back to back, and that's with the JB4 in map 6 and in map 0. And map 6, it's just ran just over 470 brake horsepower and 630 newton meters of torque. So the difference between that and a winter reading was purely down to ambient temperature. It's about 19 degrees here today in the cell, and back in winter it was about 7 degrees. So that's your equation for about 20 to 25 brake horsepower loss and about 20 newton meters of torque. At stock, it's ran completely standard with all the bolt-ons, so turbo back exhaust, forged intercooler and induction kit. It's ran 410 brake horsepower and 549 newton meters of torque. So that's the ECU backed up, and that's what it looks like in hexadecimal data. So this is how the ECU talks to the engine and tells it to do certain things like ignition, boost and stuff like that. And that's it in 2D form. That's how we usually review it. And these are multiple maps, and these are the maps defined by our A2L to kind of get some sort of figures that are understandable before we add any manipulation. So the RS3 ECU Bosch controlled, and it has been Bosch controlled since day one, but it's of the latest version, and there's a few interesting things within this ECU that we'll kind of go through. We won't go through everything, but it'll be interesting to see and show you guys what it is. So the first thing we notice is area and regional specific tuning. So we'll have a look at the sport mode for torque, for example. So you can see there's 3 versions, which is North American region, rest of the world in China, Brazilian region. Even looking at the 2D graph data, you can see the Brazilian region has a lower graph data there, and in text form it's actually lower numbers. So if you have a look at the percentages, this is at the maximum allowed torque in sport mode on full throttle. So you can see the rest of the world and China and North America are pretty much the same numbers, and that says that, you know, we have access to the same fuel, we have similar temperatures, and regionally we're pretty similar, and that's what they're trying to depict in the ECU. So The reason why Brazil is probably lower is because it's a hotter climate, it's closer to the equator, you know, so it has to run less boost. But one of the interesting facts is the RS3s in Brazil still run the same sort of power and torque. Torque graphs and power graphs are slightly different, but the same peaks. So we then kind of wonder, what does reducing the torque and power boost do? But all you've got to do is look at the ignition data. So this is the ignition map on sport mode at maximum throttle, and you can see that although China and North America and the rest of the world, the majority region run, you know, about 10.5 max ignition timing based upon the boost, Brazil actually runs a lot more. It runs, you know, to 12 degrees at the red line, and that's purely down to it running less boost pressure by torque. But increased ignition timing. Obviously there's various ignition tables, about 25 on this for different fuel qualities, and it's what's kind of, you know, interesting to see, because within the coding of the ECU, when the car's produced, all they've got to do is click on, you know, if the car's exported for Brazil, they click on that, and then the car will work in Brazil really well, as it does anywhere else. Interestingly is within the ECU, obviously the RS3s run about 1.1 bar of boost, 1.2 max probably in colder climates, but within the ECU we've got a limit at 2700, which is 1.7 bar, and a maximum 1.95 bar. So that's quite interesting to see, because, you know, the cars were never ever going to produce that. So it's quite, you know, for us it was quite odd to see such a high number for boost target or boost maximums within the ECU. But then you actually look at the PID control, which is your N75 control based upon torque modeling, and within, you know, pre-PID you can see, you know, it'll give a maximum 100% duty cycle at the highest load, at the highest percentage where it is. But if you have a look at all the torque, maximum torque allowance graphs, you'll see they're all about the 70 to 80 mark, which kind of says it allows a maximum of 80% duty cycle and no more. But they've also kind of restricted it within the N75, so change these torque tables so it kind of gives a maximum allowance of 97%. We never go 100% because it will cause overboost, but then we'll have a look at the other tables, which is, you know, maximum torque allowance there. And we've also got a lot of the load targets on this ECU will define more than kind of 1.4 bar of boost, so it's quite weird to see such high load targets for desired charge on a car that runs 1.2 bar of boost. So you can tell all the torque restrictions have kind of negated all of this and kind of put a cap on everything to keep power at 400 brake horsepower and about 540 newton meters. So we'll rescale this anyway for stage 2, because there's no point having all that overboost when we're running a bit more N75, and we'll kind of trying to hit 1.7 to 1.8 bar eventually. So guys, literally 1.4 bar of boost, and we're at 460 brake horsepower and 640 newton meters of torque. So a nice good gain there already, and we've not even touched the ignition tables as we've previously discussed. The amount of wastegate duty cycle required for the boost, it actually produces 1.1 bar, is minimal, and purely down to raising the torque limiters within the ECU, we've accessed a bit more boost from the table that already regulates boost control. So I don't know if you guys heard there on the dyno, literally boost cut and we lost all power, and that's purely down to the difference tolerance within the PID. So whatever the N75 requests for for the boost target amount based upon load. If it undershoots by too much or overshoots by too much, it will cut power, and that's exactly what it's done. So that's why it's so important on the RS3 not to use the original PID table for N75 and integrator. We literally, pre-PID and post-PID, we try and fine-tune it so that it stays within target. So I mean, majority of RS3s that we do stage 2 in the UK and international, we target between 1.7 and 1.8 bar of boost, but we try and taper it as much as possible within the PID table, so we're not overshooting when you kick down and when you shift down. Fine-tuning it first before we raise these differential thresholds. And also we're going to raise the torque now to 750 newton meters, both in the ECU and the gearbox, and start adding ignition timing. So as you can probably tell, stage 2 is a lot more work than we do, you know, tend to do on a stage 1, and it isn't the same on vehicles. So different catbacks, different downpipes, different intakes, sizes make a difference. So guys, it's getting quite warm in here, 23 degrees ambient, and intake temperatures are rising to about 45 degrees, but we did make 480 brake horsepower and 701 newton meters of torque. If you have a look at the power graph and the torque graph itself, we've got a nice flat torque curve between 3,000 and 4,500 RPM, and it tapers off after that, and power still has a nice flat bar at the top. We want to make sure that the car's safe as well if it is a hotter day, and within the compensation tables we can make it produce a lot more power when the intake temperatures reduce a little as well. So we're going to add a bit more timing at the top end as well, between 6,000 and 6,500 RPM, just to see if we can raise that peak a little and see what we can produce today. A bit challenging today with the heat in the cell, about 23-24 degrees ambient, and intake temperatures did start to rise, but once we cooled it down, we got a final result with a bit more timing, 532 brake horsepower, 730 newton meters of torque. So a nice flat torque curve between 3,000 and 5,500 RPM, and a nice smooth power curve. The actual delta gain from stock is about 130 to 140 brake horsepower at a 5,500 RPM, and about 120 brake horsepower at 6,000 RPM. Torque has risen, obviously, another 200 newton meters of torque almost, and that should equate to a good 100 to 200 quarter mile at 0 to 60. We've set the gearbox limits to about 800 newton meters, and we've set a cap in the ECU at 750 newton meters. So that makes sure that the boost won't overshoot at any moment, and also keeps engine bay temperatures, intake temperatures low without any overshooting. What we're going to do now is add a bit more pops and bangs and burbles, see if we can take the neutral limiter off as well, so that way you can rev it over 4,500 RPM in neutral and get some nice pops, bangs, and maybe some flames. So this is the standard rev limiter on the RS3, so we've got to take this off. Added a few burbles overrun between 3,500 and 6,500 RPM, so you're not always in the window all the time burning fuel. The stock burbles up to 3,000 RPM, and also we've taken off the rev limiter at static in neutral and park. Sounds absolutely savage. that's again there in graphical terms. You can see the peak power and the delta under the graph and how it all equate to a faster car. The torque gain is immense and a nice flat torque curve and a nice smooth power curve. We can take it a bit further, but in all honesty, we want a nice balance between intake temperatures and all-round weather vehicle, so it's not tuned just for a specific time or climate, and it has all compensations within it as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I know it's not been easy out there, and there has been a lack of videos from our side, and that's purely down to the coronavirus and the lockdown. So I hope you guys take it easy, stay safe, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.